And welcome to another edition of the Throwing Bagels Podcast. Jason Hamo along here with Kevin Mooney. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm good, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. And Chris Douglas, how are you, Chris?
Jay, I'm doing well.
We have another great guest on today. I would say the highest executive we've ever had on the podcast, the Chief Operating Officer of Audacy, on the executive committee of the Radio Advertising Bureau, once named one of Radio Inc.'s most influential women in radio, and most importantly, Oswego's class of 1985, Susan Larkin. Susan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. But by the way, I don't love that the year I graduated is now attached to me because it tells people how old I am.
Oh, don't worry about it. Age is just a number.
Just a number. That's it.
Just a number. First and foremost, Susan, what is your message to Audacy's listeners and employees about the bankruptcy issues that have come up recently?
Yeah. So first, let me start by saying Audacy is a really large-scaled audio and entertainment company. We have 221 radio stations in 45 markets. We have 3 podcast studios, and we're reaching for all of our radio stations and our brands and platforms, we're reaching 200 million people a month. And we have, between full-time and part-time employees, somewhere in the neighborhood of, 5,000 employees. And so this is a really big company. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how much you know about bankruptcies. I will tell you, I know a lot more about them than I did before. I've been quite educated on them. And like a Chapter 7 is full liquidation. Chapter 11 has different versions. Our version was the best possible case scenario. And so we ended up in this situation, which really is not disruptive in our day-to-day at all. So this positions us for really meaningful growth, for innovation, and for success in 2024 and beyond. And, and we told our team to expect that it is really business as usual from an operating standpoint, and that has been very true. So employees know that. We've talked about this publicly and internally, and we're running our business and excited about the growth.
Is there any hope in radio advertising bouncing back, or does Audacy have to seek opportunities elsewhere?
So radio advertising or audio advertising? Because, we are focused on audio and on radio, because radio are brands and the linear product that you're listening to in your car or on some other type of non-digital device. Smart speakers have replaced radios in the home, and 48% of ad-supported audio listening on smart speakers comes from AM/FM stations. So you think about what that's done. So, when we sort of think about all of it as an opportunity, and we sell all of it. So it's really about, and what distinguishes Audacy from other companies, and what we believe that we're absolutely the best at, is we're the best at creating premium audio content. So if you think about our brands and the ability to extend those brands, first of all, from a distribution standpoint, over platforms, we're reaching 200 million listeners a month. And that's real money in terms of being able to monetize. In-car listening, we went through a complete disruption during COVID, and it came back, but our linear listening is not at the same levels, and it's diminished by a couple percent every year. So we plan for that, but our plan is to grow that listening on our digital platform at a much greater rate. So advertisers want to buy it. Advertisers want targeted campaigns. They want a return on ad spend. And the other thing is that our personalities are the greatest influencers. They're the original influencers. Advertisers want to buy endorsements. And, our ability, again, to have like Boomer Esiason, who, hosts the morning show Boomer and Geo on WFAN in New York City, He does, he's very busy in a lot of things. And but one of the things he also does is he hosts a football show with Mike Valenti, who's a huge personality for us, Afternoon Drive with the ticket in Detroit. And Detroit's really happy today. But they do a weekly show, and that's brand extension for both of them, and that's an opportunity for us to monetize as well. And there's like 1,000 of these stories. So I think your point about the ad market, we're bullish and we're confident because revenue chases audience. So as long as we can create amazing content and we can provide the campaigns that advertisers want, the reporting that they expect, and we can prove their ad spend, then we should be able to grow our share and be successful.
I was looking at Audacy's website earlier, and there's some really legendary sports and news radio stations in the portfolio. Like in New York City, there's WFAN, there's WCBS, 10 Cent Wins, there's WIP in Philly, KMOX in St. Louis, EEI in Boston, WGR in Buffalo. We could go on KCBS in San Francisco, so many more. And there are also, famous music stations too, like K-Rock in Los Angeles and WCBS or WNEW in New York. I mean, what are the approaches in managing those music stations versus the news and talk stations?
Yeah, so as you said, we have 43 sports stations, 8 all news and 20 news talk, and then the rest in the portfolio of the 221 is music. And it's interesting, it is much harder to, if you wanted to launch a news talk station or an all news station or sports station from the ground up right now, almost impossible to do. And not only do we have the benefit of these great storied brands, but we spend a lot of time thinking about strategy and how do we and looking at research and understanding what our audiences want from us and evolving these stations. And while every single one is not necessarily number one, most are absolutely top performers. Our sports stations are the best sports stations in the country. They're the best portfolio. Nobody else has 8 all news stations, all news, completely all news. Nobody else is doing that. We're the only ones doing that. So, the investment that has occurred over the many years is the benefit that we have now because the brands are so well established. And if we can evolve those brands, but it's not easy to do because you have to modernize the content. You want to be able to reach a diverse audience, but you don't want to blow off people either. And you have to accommodate for, being available anytime, anywhere. Obviously, on demand is a huge thing. If you look at our sports station, all of our spoken word stations on our app, you will see that we have a unique product, and it's called Rewind, and they're chapters. And so you can go back to one of our sports stations and you can just look on the app and you can see, different stories that were covered and just go to those stories. And so, we're constantly evolving our product as well. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot that goes into our strategy overall and our content management and helping to grow our personalities and coach our personalities. It takes a lot of research. There's marketing involved, and certainly just being able to execute that strategy flawlessly. It is not for the faint of heart, and it's very, it's sophisticated and complex. And the way that this was managed and the way that it was handled, look, I've been in this business my entire career and I've seen it all. And we have the best and the brightest working at this company. And, if you did it 15 years ago in a different way, like it's not the same. It's so much more complex now. And it's been great. That part's been great because it's helped people grow.
There's so much work involved in spoken word. Like someone's got to edit those interviews. Someone's got to edit those highlights. Someone's got to run those highlights. Someone's got to write sports updates, news updates, top of the hour, but whatever. Every 20 minutes, 10 minutes, you name it. So there's so much that goes on behind the scenes at those stations versus a music station. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, and look, but our music morning shows, especially, there is a tremendous amount of prep that goes into the work that they do. But yeah, on the spoken word side, it takes more people to do the work. And, we hope that in the future there are opportunities with AI, not to replace people, but to take some of the task work and it's really more about automation than it is anything else. But, we're not going to find ourselves in a Sports Illustrated situation with, fake AI reporters. We're really proud of our journalism with a capital J. We care about it. And we care very much about our reporters and our anchors and the authenticity and the credibility of the work that they're doing. And it's a lot of work. It's a tremendous amount of work. And so if we could help, make some things easier with authenticated research or, different things that might be able to help them be more productive in their roles, that would be great.
Are any of the stations currently already using AI like ChatGPT for anything, like when it comes to interviews, gathering questions or things like that? Have they already started using that kind of stuff?
We've given our team the opportunity to experiment within guidelines, and we want our team to experiment. We want, as an example, if you think about back in the day when I first started out in sales, I was writing my commercials. In some cases, I was voicing them. I mean, it was like you're doing it all. So now in production, if we don't want our AEs writing commercials, and God bless, but they're not the best. Neither was I, the best copywriter out there. If that could help with copywriting, all the better. Those are things that we've said, sure, absolutely experiment with it. See if this helps you be more productive. And we have a team that, is working together on that and has provided guidelines to our team in how to experiment.
Is there a lot of overlap in listenership between the talk and music stations?
Yeah, there's definitely some, there may be some people that, for instance, you mentioned a station like K-Rock, and K-Rock is such a legendary, unbelievable, amazing, crazy, brand. And you have listeners that might listen to our morning show or might listen to our news station in the morning, might listen to KNX in LA, and then in the afternoon, they might be listening to K-Rock. And so you definitely see that. And we promote between our brands. So if you've been listening to WFAN, you hear us promoting 1010 Wins on FM, which has been on, FM for a little bit of time now, but we cross promote our brands. We have, the WNEW morning show, Karen Carson in the morning, and Karen and Johnny and intern Anthony have sat in with Boomer and Geo on WFAN. And we love doing that. They'll literally come downstairs during the show and they'll sit and talk about, something. They'll say, okay, the guys upstairs are subject matter experts. And we really like to do that. We like to, kind of cross promote where it makes sense.
As Jay had mentioned at the top of the show, you're on the executive committee of the Radio Advertising Bureau. What are the main topics the Bureau is discussing right now?
So the Radio Advertising Bureau serves its members mostly in services. And there is so much work that they are doing, very particularly in sales training, in providing research and category stories and presentations. They have a CRM that many broadcasters use. So there's a lot of services that they're providing to broadcasters. And in addition to the advocacy piece. And the advocacy piece is definitely something that we're all sort of focused on in the future. And so, RAB has to balance, because they're serving all broadcasters. They're serving, the Audacy, iHearts, and Cumulus of the world. I mean, we're the big ones. And then you've got a lot of medium-sized broadcasters, and you have a lot of small broadcasters that rely, because they don't have the scale or the resources or capacity for some of the services that the RAB is able to provide for them. But we together, all of the broadcasters as an organization, are really focused in moving that share of media, our share of voice, higher, and the advocacy piece and the research and measurement piece. It's really important for our future.
So you've held various executive positions in radio for over 25 years. What are some of the keys to your success as a leader within the industry?
I think the most important thing is that I really love what I do so much. I found a career in a business that on my hardest day is better than anything else I could possibly ever do. I love it. When I was was in school at Oswego, and I was there in the communications department, and my major was broadcasting at the time, and now it's like a different degree, and the school is different. But when I was there, I did that because I thought when I went to school that I wanted to be a theater major. And my dad was like, no way. And I thought, okay, broadcasting, it's like the next closest thing. And I thought I would be on air. And I did a few things and I took a few classes. But, I grew up with not a lot in the way of means. And I wanted to make money. I wanted to be successful. And my dad said, look, just find something you love and go all in. Leave it all on the field, just go all in every single day, run it hard. And I promise you'll be successful if you love what you're doing. And so that happened to me. And I knew that this was going to be the career that I was going to be in. But I also, because I've lived in a number of different cities, I was also flexible. And I was focused on, I knew early on that I had to find the things that I was really good at and sort of lean into those. But I also knew that, leadership, if you're a leader, you're not doing it alone. You are curious, you're asking lots of questions, and you're surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you. And I, am nearly never the smartest person in the room, but I've been really smart about who I've surrounded myself with, and also the people that I want to work for. And the thing that I care the most about in our company is our team. It's number one. And I have a lot of gratitude to be surrounded by such an incredible team. And it is about collaboration, and it is about always learning and getting better and raising the bar. But it's also, you've got to really work hard, be scrappy, have a ton of grit, and be willing to fail. I mean, there are more jobs that I didn't get than I got, right? There were so many failures. There were jobs that I thought I deserved, promotions that I thought I deserved that I didn't get. And, feel sorry for myself for 2 seconds and then, just keep going. So I think the resilience and grit are probably the things that have seen me through, but the base is the passion for the business that I have.
Did you work in sales when you were in college? Like were you on it? You said you wanted to be on air. Did you do sales also for the radio station?
No, I didn't do sales at all. As a matter of fact, I went to Doc O'Donnell. So when I was in the sales and programming class that he had, Doc O'Donnell's class, half the time was spent in programming, half the time was spent in sales. And by the way, nobody comes out and says, oh, I want to be in sales. Like, it's not necessarily
It's so
something
true.
you say. It's right. No, like I
So
want to be a
true.
star. I want to be on air. I want
Yeah.
to be famous. Like those people that get into this business, like go into it, or I want to be in marketing, or I want to be in creative. Don't go, I want to be in sales. So when we had people that would come in and speak to our class, and I went to Doc and I said, I don't know what to do. And he said, and I had a little and I didn't, by the way, I didn't intern at school. I was in a sorority. I was in the Greek Student Association. I was in our regular student association. I was doing a lot of things, and I was acting in plays. And so I didn't really have time to intern anywhere, but I did some stuff with WTOP and like anchoring. And to be honest, not that great, not that great. And so I went to Doc and I said, what do you think I should do? And he said, if you want to make money, and I feel like with your personality, you should really think about sales. And I was like, oh, well, I don't know anything about that. And he said, let me connect you with an alum. And so he connected me with a woman who was selling television in Buffalo. And she said to me, she was in her second year, and I think her name was Maura Corcoran. I might be wrong, but I had a wonderful conversation with her. And she told me about her job, and she told me how much she loved it. And she said in her second year, she doubled what she was making in her first year. And I was like, okay, I need to check this out. And so I literally applied for a job, and I found my then boyfriend, now husband, who I met in Oswego, saw an ad and said, there's a radio sales job. Maybe you should apply for that. And I did. And the rest is kind of history.
So when you were in school, there was ESPN's Steve Levy was there right around the same time as you were.
Yeah.
Did you cross paths with Steve at any point during your time at the school?
It's funny that you asked that, because I'm sure I did, but I don't have a recognition of that. I spent a lot of my time when I was there with my sorority, with sororities and fraternities, with folks on some of the sports teams, baseball and hockey mostly. I for like 2 weeks I was on the swim team, and then because I grew up with sports, but the meets were on Saturday, and as a freshman I was like, yeah, that's not for me. And at the time it was a club team, and whatever. But I was super, like, I've always, and by the way, that's part of the reason why I also am doing what I love at this particular company, because I'm super passionate about sports, and I'm super passionate about sports radio. It's my number one format of choice. I love it so much. I love to talk about it. I love to listen to it and consume all that it is. And so I spent a lot of my time, there, and I didn't. So I was probably in class with him. I probably met him. But I wasn't friends with him or anything.
So did you attend a few games at Romney?
Yeah, of course I did. And that's your throwing bagels, huh?
Sure.
Exactly.
That's where that came from.
Yep.
What was the atmosphere like at that time, attending hockey games and stuff in the early mid 80s?
Yeah, I mean, it was rough. It was rough and cold. Like, that's what it was. When you're in that field house, and it's not like what it is today. I mean, let's face it, campus when I was there was not what campus is today. And it's so much nicer. And the sports facilities are, I mean, you're talking about like old wood seating, and
That's right.
all of that.
That's right.
Like, it was rough and tumble. You bundled up, you drank a bunch of beer before you went in there. Everybody was very loud and rough, and that was the crowd. But it was super fun.
I think
Proud of our Lakers.
Yes. Well, I believe Ed Gozick was playing, actually. Maybe he graduated, like he went, what was it, 83? or somewhere around there. So he may have been on the, who knows? He may have been on the ice when you were there in Romney or in
Could
your,
be.
when you first got there. So who knows? It's
Yeah,
a
the guys
small
I
world.
knew on the
Have
hockey
83.
team were not famous, and mostly from Canada.
Were they the guys that didn't play as much? Is that what you're saying? Or they weren't?
No, I don't know. They just weren't, they like to, I mean, they loved hockey, obviously. But they also like to have a lot of fun. And, we just, look, I lived in a house. I didn't live in the sorority house, but I lived in 91 Fifth Ave. I lived in a house off campus, and we were very enterprising. We were a very enterprising group because we all needed to, and I should have known like that maybe that would have, but my friends, and actually I'm next weekend, I'm seeing a bunch of my sorority sisters. We're on a trip together and we haven't seen each other in many years, but we were an enterprising group. And what the guys on the hockey team, our friends on the hockey team helped us with was we needed to make money. And so we decided that we would have after parties. And we convinced the beer distributor in Oswego, I don't know how, to front us the kegs.
Was it
And then we would
C's?
pay them after. And these guys helped us. They were like our bouncers. And they sort of just helped us like carry kegs and do all this. And we gave them a cut. And we charge, a few bucks a door at our house. Now, the reality was, and that was all of that was our grocery money. That was our going out money. And, we had a little business there. It was pretty good.
You can
I
probably
know. I
edit.
think back at I do think back at some of the crazy stuff that occurred back then. It was so fun. And it was so even like our hell night, it wasn't that bad.
People make it out to seem like it's well.
Right.
Although I know other fraternities that have done way worse things than my fraternity ever did. So, but that's a different story for another day.
Yeah, exactly.
The hazing stories have to sit off to the side right now, is what you're saying?
Yeah, something like that.
But look, I mean, it's really fun to be able to, what was great was when I moved back to New York City, working for Audacy, I was able to connect with some of my closest friends from Oswego because there are so many people, and in our industry, on the sales and revenue side, on the content side, I found so many acquaintances, and then reconnecting with friends there, and that was great. And I was thrilled because when you sort of become a bit of a nomad and you live in a bunch of different cities, you don't stay as connected. And that's why I didn't really, quite frankly, stay as connected to Oswego. And that's why I've been, grateful that Dana Murphy has helped sort of reconnect me with the school that I, feel so grateful for the opportunity to graduate from.
You mentioned your nomadic lifestyle for a while. Where have you gone across this country in your career?
Yeah, so I started out in Syracuse, well, Auburn, then Syracuse, New York, and then Tampa, Florida, and that's it. And the irony of that is when I moved to Tampa, I worked for CBS, and that was my first. I was there for a number of years, and the original CBS pre-Infinity. And now at Audacy, it's a version of CBS Radio. So I think it's interesting, sort of the full circle moment there. But I worked in Tampa, and then I went to Columbus, Ohio, and I worked there. And that was my first management job. I was a national sales manager in Columbus, and I worked for JCOR. I started there working for Great American Citycasters, and then JCOR pre-Clear Channel. And then I moved to Minneapolis and worked for ABC, Disney, and ESPN. And I started selling sports in Florida. And then I was able to do that in Columbus, Ohio State Buckeyes. And that was my first experience with a big college football team because we didn't have a football team.
Right.
And so, hockey was our jam and other sports, but at Oswego. So that was, to be able to sit in the shoe in Columbus, Ohio, and broadcast games and have sports coverage and have, some of these, I mean, people like Kirk Herbstreit and others, Earl Bruce and some of the greats, be part of our talent pool. And then I moved to ABC, Disney in Minneapolis. I worked for rock stations. Those are now Cumulus stations, but we had Disney and we had the connection with ESPN. And so that's where I got to know a ton of folks from Bristol and ESPN. And then I moved to Orlando, Florida, and that was my first job as a general manager and then a market manager. And I was working for Cox Enterprises, Cox Media Group at the time. I was there for 11 years, and I was a general manager, market manager, and then I was a regional vice president overseeing other markets. And then I joined Audacy in 2017, and my adventure started in San Francisco. And I went out to San Francisco, and that was incredible. It was incredible to go work with KCBS and Alice in a really great city with an incredible team. And I wasn't out there very long when our then COO, Weezy Kramer, asked me to come back home to New York City and run the market. And so I was also a regional president and overseeing the New York City market. And then in 2020, I moved into my current role as COO, and I moved to Philadelphia because that's where we're based. So that's moved around a little bit.
What originally led you to go to Oswego? Were there other colleges that you were interested in going to, or how did that work out for you?
That is a really interesting question. So I sort of defied my parents a little bit. First, again, I wanted to go to a theater school. And so I started to explore that. And I got really shut down very quickly on that. And, my parents really wanted me to go to Cornell or Syracuse. And those schools were very expensive. And I felt like that was going to be more problematic for me financially. And so I, just applied to a whole bunch of SUNY schools and got into most of them. And the reason why I ended up at Oswego is that, again, my dad knew some people that had been there and had a really good experience. And he's like, that's the one that, and we went up to see the campus, and it looked cool. And it was far enough away from them, from my family, but still in the state, but it was a far enough drive. And then, of course, there was like an airline that, you could go back and forth, but it was a far enough drive that I was far enough away, but I could drive home if I wanted to. So that's how I ended up there. I mean, there was really not a lot of rhyme or reason when I got dropped off there.
Did you get a tour of the campus at all? Did you do any sort of orientation before you came and actually attended the school?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did. We went up to look at the campus. And we went to Oneonta, we went to Oswego. We'd sort of ruled out a couple of other ones. There were a couple that I just felt weren't going to be a fit for me. But I don't know. I was sort of taken with, look, spending time in New York City and Rockland County, to be on Lake Ontario, to have this beautiful scenic campus that it was very attractive. And it had a very good theater program. So I was like, that's my way in, and also a really good broadcasting program. So I guess that's how I ended up there, because it was sort of the combination of all of it. It was the best fit for me.
When you think of your experience at Oswego, what did you learn there that you've taken with you throughout your career?
It was interesting because the classes that we took in the broadcasting and now communication, media, and the arts program, the classes that we took were so comprehensive, and they covered everything from broadcast engineering. Like, I remember that class. That was interesting. So that class was me and like 5 dudes sitting around a table with a professor and basically saying, okay, you're going to acquire a radio station. You're going to get an FCC license. You're going to build a tower. You're going to build a building. You're going to put a whole business plan together. And that was actually the engineering class. And it was like a 300 level class. And so it was going to be a lot of credit. It was an intimate setting where literally we sat around with a professor, and that wasn't, as opposed to like broadcasting 101 when you're in this huge
lecture hall,
And
whatever.
Lecture hall.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge. And so I loved the smaller classes.
Mhm.
And as you went into the higher level classes, you were able to have these smaller classes. And so I learned a lot about the business itself. I learned about FCC licenses. I learned about in programming and sales, like just the mechanics of how it worked. And I think that it helped me BS my way into my first job. But the thing that I learned the most is I did learn a lot about the business, and the experiences in the theater department were very helpful to me ultimately in sales because I also did a lot of I took directing classes and things like that, which helped me in leadership and management. And I didn't know that at the time, but what I learned were all those skills that you need in the working world, and some of them happen to be specialized to the industry that I was in. So again, I felt really, really fortunate to gain that, we'll say, book knowledge and some practical experience to be able to translate it. But more than anything else, I think I was excited about the medium itself. Like I knew, after taking all those classes, that if I could find a job in broadcasting, that's where I wanted to end up. I didn't know I was going to love it as much as I was. I just thought it was going to be a cool, fun business. I mean, it's the entertainment business.
Yeah.
And being in a media business, I thought would be great. So I wasn't, sort of like my roommate, I had a roommate who was a marketing major and a roommate who was a business major. And they some went to work for ad agencies, a couple went to law school. Like people did different things. And for me, I wanted to be on the entertainment side of things. I had no idea that I was going to love it as much as I did. And that, that I would end up in an executive position.
So you mentioned, taking a class where it was basically you and like five guys sitting
Mm-hmm.
around a table doing the work. When you graduated Oswego in the mid 80s, the radio industry was a pretty heavily male dominated industry.
Mm-hmm.
Did you face any barriers, or challenges, being a woman breaking into radio sales at that time in the mid 80s?
No, I didn't have challenges breaking in to the industry at all. There were, I think it was more challenging to break into management positions.
Mhm.
That was a little bit harder. And I always felt like, you know, there weren't a lot of people that looked like me in leadership positions. And so the ones that were there, but I sort of didn't think about that at the time. I never felt, and I will say, I have always felt fortunate to be able to forge through my career, uh, and not have to feel that I wasn't offered a position because I was a woman. The positions I didn't get because I didn't either have enough experience, or I was younger at the time, or whatever else thing. I don't think it was ever that, but I do think that, especially, I've raised two kids, I've moved them around. There are a lot of women that find that harder to do. And so there's been sacrifices, and I've put my career first in many cases. I'm so close to my children. They're amazing, very successful people, and I've always stayed really close to them, but they've known how important my career is. And so I have traveled a lot. I've worked a ton of hours. I've done all those. I've made my kids go to school when they were sick. Like I didn't care. It was like, buck up, you're fine. It's all going to be fine. And I always wanted to, I wanted to compete at the highest levels, but it certainly is, I think, a little bit harder for women because, you're still, especially if you're a parent, and because you're still the go-to mom and you have everything else that you're juggling. And, I would sort of joke and say, well, okay, guys, it's a little bit easier. It seems a little bit easier for you, than it is for me. So, but I do think that the responsibility, I feel really passionately about helping to support women grow into leadership positions and not have them feel like they can't have it all. Because you can have it all. You just can't have it all great all the time. And that's not gender specific. That's for any of us. Any of us that want to forge our careers, you have to make sacrifices. And personal, professional, we make choices in the things that we are willing to do and not willing to do, based on some of those choices. But I'm really passionate about helping support women.
And do you feel like the times have changed to a pretty decent amount, from probably, I would say, from the 2000s on till today, where there's there's a lot more women in these senior leadership positions?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the other thing too is, I have the benefit of, I have a son and a daughter, but my daughter is 25 and she's a badass. And she was a college athlete and at the highest levels, and she is in the music business now, but she sees no barriers, none whatsoever. She doesn't feel like, she thinks that she can do anything that she wants to do. And so I think I didn't necessarily see those things as visibly, but I don't think that I had the same type of aspirations. Like my brother and my family will tell you that I was always like super determined and they felt like I would be successful because I was ambitious. I never thought that necessarily when I was younger, but when I look at her and her friends, I just like, they are going and they don't see obstacles at all. And that's great. But I do think it's harder also because folks that are just coming into the industry also don't have patience. And you need patience because just because you started and you're pretty good at your job, you're not getting promoted in 2 months. And you're not going to come in making, a whole bunch of money to start. And many think that that's the case.
I think in hindsight, you probably had that determination. You just didn't realize it. Whereas you see it in your daughter now, and that probably was you back in the day. You just, in your mind at the time, you didn't think, you didn't see it because it's not something that you can really see, versus
Yeah,
you
I probably
seeing it in your
wasn't as
daughter.
conscious. Yeah, I wasn't probably as conscious about it. But, look, I've called upon mentors and other people for advice. I've always collaborated with others in our industry and tried to be better. And I think now any leaders that aren't growth minded personally will fail. I mean, you have to be a successful leader, you have to be really curious and you have to get better and constantly sort of raise a bar. And I think that's something that was instilled in me early on. So it probably is DNA.
How important is it for you to engage with Oswego students and alumni?
So, I will be honest with you, it hasn't been important to me. And it hasn't been important to me, not because I haven't cared. It wasn't top of mind. As you're sort of forging your career and then I'm, putting kids through college and all of a sudden I become fans of their colleges. That's the other thing. My kids went to different schools and so, that sort of became the priority. My husband went to the same college that I, went to Oswego also. But whether it was the kids' high school was a priority, the kids' colleges were a priority, and sort of giving back to my own university was not something that I was as conscious of until recently. Sort of really thinking about and engaging with students and because again it's more like, okay, I'm spending time with my kids' friends that want advice and mentoring people in our company or in the industry, doing that formally and informally. It's like ain't nobody got time to do all of this. So it hasn't been I've always cared about it, but I've not carved out the time. So
So
now, now I have so much time on my hands. No, I have no time. I have zero time. Time is what I don't have at all. But luckily, I'm not a big sleeper, so I can, just keep going. But yeah, I was excited about the opportunity to kind of reconnect with people from Oswego, to sort of come full circle and host that event that we had recently at Audacy in New York. And and Dana's helped me sort of make that connection more. But also, it's funny because some of my friends and sorority sisters that I had one there at the event come join me, and I have few that just couldn't make it and were so bummed out they couldn't make it, and we're excited about seeing others. And so I'm connected with my sorority sisters because they are my friends. But in terms of current students at school, when I first graduated, I came back multiple times and spoke and did some things, and then it just sort of like, time went by and I wasn't doing that anymore. And I haven't been to, the comms dinners or any of that either. And it's really been like, what's the priority? Okay, company thing, industry thing, that's sort of last.
Not like you don't have much going on or anything like that.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
Before we get you out of here, we like to ask all of our alumni from Oswego about food because, we are the Throwing Bagels podcast and we like bagels and we like all kinds of other food too. Back in our tenure, the big to-do in the dining hall, the craze was the chicken patty sandwich. And I'm wondering, was that the same back when you were in
Yes.
college as well? It was the same thing. The chicken patty
Absolutely.
sandwich was
Chicken
the thing.
patty sandwich with mine was with yellow American cheese. And no question. The two biggest things were the chicken patty sandwich, and then also when there was like chicken wing night. Like
Ooh.
that was a huge thing for us. There was it would be like a special thing that you could do. But yeah, no, that was my favorite. That was lunch every day. Chicken patty sandwich
nice.
with American cheese.
We didn't have wing night.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so.
They did away with that. They had wing night when we were there. But yeah, I mean that's the most memorable thing that I ate there.
And just American cheese, just yellow American cheese, no mayonnaise, no ketchup, nothing, no lettuce, tomato, nothing of that. Just cheese.
And no, because I'm not like a mayonnaise fan, and I couldn't really think about putting anything else. The cheese sort of felt like a condiment to me. I mean, I really like ketchup, but I didn't mix that then. That was pretty much it. Look, I also one of my other in addition to ramen noodles and all the other stuff that we ate while we were there, but one of the other things I used to like to get in the dining hall was I used to like to get a bagel with butter with and then take barbecue potato chips and smash them in between and eat that. That was a very nutritious lunch for me.
Sounds delicious, actually.
My wife does
Yes.
that with potato chips also. She still does
Nice.
that.
You guys, it's the best. If you take a toasted bagel and you put a little bit of butter and then you take barbecue potato chips and you put it in, you smash them, I am telling you, it's great. Although to be honest, I say this so cavalierly, like I've had it recently. It's been 100 years since I've had it. I know it was good.
She was a senior in college last time she actually had it.
Right, exactly. I worked in the dining hall my senior year.
Ah.
There's a little bit of trivia. I worked in the dining hall in the sub shop, and then I also did a little bit of banquet waitressing,
Oh my
serving.
God. I worked at the banquet thing
only my
too.
senior year. Yep.
Fun
Any
time.
sub shop orders?
Oswego sub shop?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oswego
yeah,
sub
yeah.
shop.
Yeah. First of all, way too many onions, people. Like way too many onions. The smell of onions, the whole onion thing was like not what my thing. I was definitely like a turkey and cheese gal with lettuce, dressing,
Mhm.
sort of like the Italian dressing, oil and vinegar thing. That's what
Salad.
They're very heavy. They're very heavy on the condiments in general there.
Yes.
I mean, the subs were like
you have to literally
soaked.
tell
You'd have
them.
to, yeah, the subs would be like so soaked.
Yeah. You have to always tell them go light. Like whenever I get a cheeseburger sub, I'm like light on the lettuce because otherwise it's just basically a sandwich with lettuce.
We used to get, you know, Pizza Pub pizza, like the calzone that was
Yes.
basically the
Yes.
folded over pizza. That was a fan favorite. And then Pizza Hut, remember, the Pizza Hut there, Sal's, of course, wings. Although I didn't like the whole wing, like that whole wing thing,
Oh yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Clam bake,
Mhm.
some good food there.
Yeah.
Canales.
I'm
Was
sorry.
Canales there? Was
Oh,
Canales
yeah,
there?
yeah, of course.
Canales, wow.
Canales. Yeah, definitely.
Nice big chunk of lasagna. Ah,
Nice big chunk of, I know. And then of course Rudy's and the
Right.
stand.
of course.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Bev's.
A fried fish something and ice cream.
That's
There you go.
That is a perfect. That is perfect.
I mean, the
It's a
picture,
fried
I
fish
was the
something.
picture of health my freshman year. Not.
We were all like,
Yeah.
that.
Oh my gosh.
I think
can't
you
remember.
have to be like that if you went to Oswego.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I was in sports and I came from a family that liked to eat pretty healthy. And I went up there and it was like, holy, I remember I came home freshman year and my parents were like horrified. Like, what happened to you? And then, then I learned
Just college.
just college.
College happened.
Beer
You gotta,
consumption.
yeah. Well, you got to deal with the cold somehow. That's what we always say.
That's
You have to
right.
deal with the cold
That's right.
somehow.
Big down coat. Yep. Yep.
Well, Susan, this was fantastic. We really appreciate the time, and all the stories and everything. And we wish you nothing but success in everything. And we hope to see Audacy, continue to build and continue to grow from where you are right now.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun, and I appreciate your inviting me and the opportunity to meet you guys. And I hope that your podcast continues to go. I mean, this one, no doubt, is going to get so many downloads. So anyway, thank you. I've enjoyed it very much.
And that was another great interview from Susan Larkin. Although she didn't really want to say it, but class of '85 Oswego graduate. Guys, that was another fantastic interview.
Agreed.
Probably gonna be the highest executive we ever get on this podcast, unless we get the president of the United States. I don't know.
You never know.
We'll work on that one. We'll work.
Yeah,
on it.
or that'll take some work. But yeah, yes, you're right. And it was great that, I mean, she mentioned she had a really busy schedule, and I'm sure she is. Every second is on the calendar, right? So the fact that she took that hour out to speak with us, it was really phenomenal. It was really great of her to do that.
Yeah, and very much appreciated too. I mean, like you said, she's got 1.5 million things to do, and especially with what her company's going through right now, just to make some time for us three knuckleheads. And
Yeah, right.
So
I mean, I
think
met
that's really
her.
cool.
I met her at the event at the Audacy offices, and I literally spoke to her for 2 minutes. She was all around the place, and at the end, I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" And kind of tried to talk to her quickly and see if she'd want to join us, and she said reach out to her, and that was it. So I mean, I didn't get a chance to really talk to her too much that night, but I'm glad I'm glad I was able to get those 2 minutes and quickly just say hi, and because it was definitely a great interview. But quickly, let's just quickly recap. This past weekend in football, the Lions and the Ravens winning. Great game, that Lions game, and then we had the Niners and the Chiefs last night, and unfortunately the Bills once again somehow finding a way
Buffalo
to kill themselves.
Yeah.
To just will it ever happen? That's the question. Will it
you know-
ever happen?
Eventually, but my main concern is, has anyone checked on Brent Axe? All right, we need to go check on our friend Brent Axe, make sure he's still okay. All right, we don't need him start smoking again, getting the bad habits.
But
I'm
you
sure
know
he's
who's
all
happy
right.
right now? You know who's happy right now? Another friend of the state, a friend of the podcast, Joe Yurden.
Joe
Yes.
Yurden. Oh my goodness. I mean, his Lions haven't done anything since he was 12 years old, I think is the last time they were in this position. And I saw something today where the last time the Lions were in this position, like things like Twitter and MySpace and Google and Amazon weren't even in existence,
No.
which is for just to put it in perspective, that's wild. That is so wild to me.
They have a very if the Niners play anything like they did this week, the Lions have a fantastic opportunity to go to the Super Bowl.
Look, the Lions, their colors aren't in the Super Bowl logo.
Yeah,
So that means they're
well,
not
that's
going
the
to
other
make it.
question. Exactly. You know what? I am if it does happen, and we do see a Niners Ravens Super Bowl, I am very curious to see what the colors are next year. Because
You know what's going to happen is Aaron Rodgers will just come out and just start spewing BS again. So please just make it two other teams.
well, that's the thing. If it's can you imagine if it's all green? Because then it's like Jets and Eagles fans going crazy. We're gonna make the Super Bowl. You know, like the whole thing is just green. And it doesn't matter like which side is which color, like how do you decide like who makes it, you know? I don't know. The conspiracy theories are abound, I tell you.
But I mean, so what? The conspiracy theory is that the last two Super Bowl logos before this one, they had
Right.
colors that were somewhat vaguely reminiscent of the two teams that were participating.
Very
That is
vaguely.
Very
vague.
Like very vaguely.
Yeah.
Enormous stretch.
Oh,
It's a symptom of people with too much time on their hands.
Exactly. But the conspiracy theorists love that kind of stuff. You know, those conspiracy theory dorks are like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
great. Look at this. You got the what's his name? Who's the running back that said the NFL is scripted? You know,
There's more than
no
one, I'm
idea.
sure.
Yeah.
no, yeah, but it was recent. Oh man, I can't remember his name, but yeah, he was like when he came out and said the NFL is completely scripted. Like, come on, dude. Really?
It's
Not
wrestling.
entirely. Not entirely.
Like that's insane. You cannot script this.
Just some things.
There's no way. It's
Just some
impossible.
things.
Impossible.
Just
I
a
tell
few
you.
things.
No.
The referees,
Yeah,
players.
yeah.
Who the referee?
Uh,
The one thing, and I
A
know Chris.
spot
I know
here,
Chris
a
is
spot
very. I know
there.
Chris. You have a very strong opinion on this, but the referees. First of all, refereeing has been horrendous all season.
It's been
but
pretty rough. Yes.
let's call a spade a spade. When can we just get like some sort of digital marker
I mean,
for the football? Like
we have
come
old
on.
people
I mean,
in
the guys
white
can barely
hats.
see who are marking the football. They're like 70 years old.
I mean, they're older than dirt. They're using a stick and chains to measure 10 yards. Meanwhile, in soccer, we have automated offsides. Like, why can't you use the same technology to mark the ball? Like,
in a gazillion dollar industry sport, you know, they can't afford to
It's
like to
baffling.
do this.
baffling.
you can't put a tracker in the football to determine where it is on the
Right?
field.
There you
Like,
go. Something.
wow.
Just
something.
just do the same thing that soccer does with VAR. You have people in a booth somewhere overlooking everything. If the official blatantly misses something, be like, "Hey, dude, you missed this. Oh, sorry. Okay, we'll spot it over here instead." It's that simple. And then
but
I
the
get
problem is-
it,
the
like
problem
it's
with that is
over
you can't stop it
refereeing.
you can't stop it every
all that.
second,
No,
every
I understand
spot of
that.
the football.
I get that, but if it's so blatant, right? I mean, if it's that blatant, or if it's that close and you need to get it right, then get it right.
Like
People
love
will
getting the first
appreciate
down or
that
not.
more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the spotting over the weekend was just unbelievable. Like a
Yeah.
yard short here and a yard short there, and it's like, come on, man.
Well, fellas, this was a fantastic episode. Another fantastic episode, I should say. And we have another fantastic episode coming up in 2 weeks. You can catch us at our email address, throwingbagelspodcast@gmail.com. Catch us on Facebook, on Twitter, on X, whatever the hell you want to call it, on Instagram, Threads, LinkedIn, and wherever you get your podcasts, you can listen, or you can just listen on our website at throwingbagels.com. Kevin, Chris, This was a great one. Another good episode coming up in 2 weeks. Have a good one.
You too.
See ya.